I decided to take a walk into Elliot's loft and just looking around and stumbled upon someone sitting inside, sipping on a beverage. And I shouldn't say someone. It was just a little surprising to find this person there at this particular time. I'm speaking of Lady Marci. So somehow she found a way to open the door and get inside, and she's been coming inside the loft quite a bit. So I guess I should just maybe speak to her. Lady Marcy, how are you?
I'm good. You made me sound like a creeper stalker a little bit though. I don't know. Found my way in and sipping on a beverage. That sounds like a I got here to make you breakfast. Don't ask me how I got in kind of thing.
No, I wasn't trying to make it sound like that. I just happy to have you in the loft. Anytime you're in the loft, we're just happy to have you. So I kind of wanted to kind of paint a different picture. That's all. That's all.
Okay,
That's
I just
behind
want to
that.
make sure. I just want to make sure I wasn't catching no B&E behind this show or nothing. Like I did what? I had to make
No,
sure I had to
no,
be
no,
clear. I
not
had
at
to be
all.
clear. I had to be clear.
No, and I like that, keeping it clear. I love keeping it clear, but no, that's it. That's it right there. Always good to have you inside the loft on When Black Men Talk. You and I have done a few shows recently, and one show we did was based on victimhood and victims. And this show kind of, in a sense, aligns with that. This show is going to be basically speaking on the conversation around of validation. And as I put this together with some thought, affirmation came to me, the sense of affirmation and a love language of affirmation. And we kind of use words for affirmations, acts of service, gifts, quality time, and physical touch. And I started thinking about it in that way. And I looked at that if you take those affirmations from a child and it's absent in their childhood, I could believe right there could be the foundation, it could be the base of one seeking validation. It's just my kind of initial thought. I want to get your reaction to it.
So I think you're definitely onto something. I had actually a colleague of mine had a family member that had somebody pass away, and the individual didn't really have a relationship with the person who passed away. It was a parent, and I mean, they had a relationship, but it was distant over the years and things like that. And the person really struggled when they passed away, and so has been using social media to, uh, express grief and things like that. And one of the things that we discussed from a mental health standpoint is that oftentimes individuals will reach out through like social media and things like that for that validation, for that affirmation. And the thing about it is they can do it in such a way that they get to paint the narrative of the baseline. So the individuals that you're seeking affirmation and validation from don't necessarily know all the intricacies of the story. They only know your version. And so oftentimes the validation and the affirmations that we're out there seeking and getting, whether it's on social media or just, even sharing a story with a friend, um, is not always the full picture. So they're affirming and they're validating something that's essentially borderline an untruth, but it feeds back into our soul and it feeds back into how we need to feel, how we want to feel included into situations that maybe in reality we felt excluded from, or we felt like we weren't necessarily a part of it. We're kind of on the sidelines watching. And so it can, you seek that validation elsewhere because the person that you're seeking from oftentimes doesn't not have the whole picture. That's kind of what comes to mind for me.
Nice response. I want to go back to the childhood because I've noticed over the years you can really learn something about someone's emotional state or see some things about someone their emotional state if you kind of go back and walk through their childhood with them. Meaning that there's some things that could happen that if they weren't kind of healed on or dealt with in a certain way, they still might be permeating in this person's life current day. So when I go back to the love language, and just let's just go back to an innocent child. Let's not give this child a name, but an innocent boy or girl, and think about them being raised with really no words of affirmation, no acts of service being given to them, or very little. It could have been the parents are together. Maybe the dad is not there. Maybe the dad is raising the child. But the gifts I'm not going to spend too much focus on, but they're nice, especially when you're young, to receive gifts, because we tend to believe when we're younger, when someone bestow a gift onto us, they care about us, they love. It's their way of kind of showing love and appreciation. But quality time, and this one to me is huge. This really, really is huge. And I don't think it gets the attention that it deserves, especially for childhood. Physical touch. Physical touch. Now,
Mhm.
that's kind of a little bit, you can go a lot with that because we know how things that went on with molestation of that and that nature with a lot of children. But think about the physical touch of a child with his mother, a warm hug. Think about the physical touch of a child with his father, those embraces, those all the dopamines and stuff, and all the good that comes from that. So imagine this child being absent of physical touch, quality time, not just time, quality time. And then you get to the acts of service, and they didn't hear the words of affirmation as they were raising it. And now you're a full grown adult. What does that look like?
So there's, one of my background, one of the things that I focus on a lot in my counseling sessions with clients and so forth is the generational system that individuals come from. And our generational system starts, we have a very early learning period from birth to age 7, and then we have an extended learning period from 7 to roughly 14. So when you look at that, those are our developmental years, but particularly that 0 to 7. So when you start talking about, lacking affection, lacking, words of validation, words of affirmation, physical touch, all of those kinds of things, that 0 to 7, 7 to 14 age range is where you learn how to engage with the world. And so oftentimes, and you see that also with infants in ICU units. So they may be in ICU, but they'll have people that will come in and hold the babies. So physical touch is an incredibly important component in everyone's development. And it teaches us how to touch. It teaches us how to engage and what affection feels like. And so in those early, that cognitive learning period from 0 to 7, if you're lacking those things, then you are oftentimes craving something, but you don't necessarily know what. So then as you grow, so now we're into that 7 to 14, we start, particularly those early teen years, 10 through 14, that's when we start seeking those things elsewhere. And so that's when you see people, really kids relying on their friends, or they're staying out a lot. Or with boys, you see, gangs and sports kind of taking the place of some of those things. And so oftentimes we're out seeking some form of validation, some form of love language, but we don't have the words to be able to tie to it to say, okay, this is what I need. And so we're just out there searching and seeking, and we're not really sure what we're looking for. So oftentimes that's how we get, embroiled into bad, dating situations, or hanging around with wrong crowds because people make us feel accepted. And so they're providing that coveted space and providing that affirmation and that validation for us. And so definitely lacking those things in childhood takes a huge toll on us all the way through adulthood until we do the work to learn how to understand, why do we think the things that we think? Why do we do the things that we do? And why do I engage the way that I engage? Why do I put up walls instead of fences? Those types of things. But most people don't ever take the time to sit back and, do that self analysis.
Self-reflection is huge. It's very important. I want to kind of go with this a little bit more while we're here. It's Mark Elliott and Lady Marci. We're inside Elliott's Loft for When Black Men Talk, and we come here for conversation. We just come in here, we come inside, and we enjoy deep, provocative conversations. Interesting enough, emotional support or encouragement, the lack of one from both parents that affirmation can leave some children emotionally crippled. So if you're thinking about someone being emotionally crippled and they move into an adult state, you just don't lose that crippleness when you become an adult. And there is the reason why, for me, I think a lot of times we're working or we're experiencing a relationship with adults that are simply acting like children because they're crippled in a sense. And that word crippled can sound strong, but if you're paying attention to the emotional support or encouragement, and what I've noticed, this is something I've seen over the years in my life. I've seen it play out in different areas. I'm a move it to fatherhood to an extent, and being a father. Ironically, people that have come across in life and things I experience aren't used to fathers being fathers, based on the fact of what their father was to them. If their father wasn't in their life, they didn't experience that. They're not used to it. So in reality, they may not even understand the fact that mere fact that they didn't have that, they don't appreciate a father being a father. And they look at a father supposed to act and be a certain way and really don't have a clue what a father's supposed to be because they never had one. They didn't have the words of affirmation, the acts of service, the quality time, the physical touch. So, with that being said, a lot of times it develops in the word I'm going to use jealousy because they don't really want someone else to get what they didn't get. And they can't even see it as such, but it plays out. And they'll believe that sometimes what you might be doing is way too much, what you're giving, what you're carrying. And it's like, how can you basically quantify what the father should be doing if you never experienced one? Who are you to validate and judge that when you never experienced it? But I found that to be interesting, especially with folks that didn't have something. It's a part of like if they didn't have it subconsciously, they don't really want to see others experience it. And I would think differently. And it's just my way of thinking. If I didn't experience something and I didn't have it, I would want others to have better than what I had. I wouldn't carry that inside of me. And it's almost like a resentment, so to speak. And I know some people hear this and they go, no, no, trust me. I don't speak and make stuff up. And I'm sure I'm not the only father has experienced this. Because in this world, in this society, we do not place a lot of focus on dads. We don't expect men to be good fathers. We really don't. Basically, we expect fathers to pay for this, pay for that, do that, handle this, break that when it's, fix that when it's broken. But to be a true blue, hardcore father, we don't have expectations for fathers being that. And for certain reasons, a lot of times men have disappointed in areas of being fathers, but the fathers that are fathers, those are the ones that catch what I just said to you a little while ago. And if you want to if you want to respond to it, I'll be happy to listen. But to me, I mean, I might got off course a little bit, but I don't think so because I'm sticking with the childhood. Because again, if you haven't had this from one of your right here, if you haven't had that from one of your parents, you were emotionally crippled. You were. Whether you want to acknowledge it, understand it, or not, you were. And you probably became an emotionally crippled adult. Your response to some things I said, Lady Marcy.
So I say I agree 110%. Uh, daddyless daughter, reformed daddyless daughter syndrome here. Uh, and that was definitely true for me. I had this fantasy in my mind growing up of, what my dad was going to be like and what life would be like for me if he were there. And so I had painted this rosy colored picture about, who my dad was and, how my step siblings had, so much better than me because they had him in their lives and I didn't. And, so I told myself all these stories, but what that did was exactly what you're saying. So I grew up emotionally compromised in a lot of ways as it related to how I related with men. And so I was seeking comfort, validation, acceptance, approval from men. And it didn't really matter the content of that person's character, that basically they just had to be male. And so I had to relearn how to be in relation with men, and I had to relearn and understand and come to terms with the relationship that I did or didn't have with my dad, and had to own up to my own responsibility now that I'm an adult. Whether he's there or not, I have some choices that I have to make. And the way I was making choices and using that as the excuse was very unhealthy, and it turned out to be dangerous. What I will also say that I agree with is because I've heard women say, and I don't know if you were speaking in the context of relationships with women and them, judging how you parent or whatever, but I will say that I've heard women say that, as the new wife, new spouse, new significant other, whatever, wanting to take that relationship to take priority over the children, whether it's for finances, like, so, well, what are you buying them this for? You give them child support, why are you doing this extra? Or you're giving her this, that's for the kids, so you shouldn't have to do this, like that, you're taking money out of our household, those types of conversations. And not just from a financial standpoint, but also from a time standpoint. So, well, we were supposed to do this, and so now you tell me you got to go pick your kids up. Well, where does that leave us? Where am I a priority? So feeling like they're in some sort of competition with the children. From my perspective, and maybe this comes from me desiring a relationship with my dad for so long, that to me, that is one of the greatest characteristics that I can see in a man who is a good father. I would rather you be a good father than a good provider. So where does your time go? Where does your attention go? How do you engage with your children? What do you pour into them? What are you giving them spiritually? What are you giving them emotionally? I think is way more important than finances. And so I have a little bit different perspective on it, but I do see exactly, what you were kind of describing earlier as being very, very true. I am the opposite of that. I tend to probably go too far in the other direction. Like, I'll forgive a lot of sins if you're a good dad. And so I probably need to find somewhere more in the middle. But I just know, between the work that I do and, how many people that I deal with clients as far as substance abuse and domestic violence and all of those things, when I take it back and we start looking at those generational systems, typically there's an absentee parent, oftentimes the father. And then when you start throwing incarceration in there, it just becomes this trifecta for chaos, really.
Yeah. Interesting enough, that some of the things I talked about that I experienced and others may have experienced was kind of based on our relationships. But I'm not going to say it necessarily stopped there. I've been in situations where you're at the doctor and the doctor says something to you, basically a woman doctor, and you go, no, XYZ, well, I'm a doctor, well, I'm the child's father. I don't give, excuse my language, I don't give a fuck how many years you went to school. You don't have the last say so here.
Mm-hmm.
It is what it is. You're the doctor. Would that supposed to trump me being the sperm while the child was here? And that's always been my response. Even to, with educators, sometimes you have to kind of pull their coattail because, again, they're not really used to fathers being prominent, being strong, having a voice, leading. They're not. And a lot of that's based on, again, they haven't had that in their lives. So there goes the emotional crippleness. Getting back to validation, and for the most part, as humans, we kind of seek validation. We have tendencies as individuals to kind of crave attention and recognition from others. But sometimes validation, for that part, moves into excessive, and that's where it comes a sense where it starts to play with your worth and your identity. And again, if you go back to the emotional crippleness, you go back to the support and encouragement, how do you understand your worth? What is your identity? So if you're having trouble really kind of balancing that and understanding that, and that's not really put together on a solid foundation, here comes the seeking of validation from others because you need to justify your worth, your identity. You're not sure about it. It wasn't given to you in a strong sense. You don't truly believe in it. You're reaching out to be validated. In a fragile sense, self worth plays a big role, and that's trying to basically garner approval from others. And I know you spoke earlier about social media, and I may get there in a little bit, but I think just at the core of what I say of validation, we're really trying to, get approval from others to make us feel good about our own self worth. And a lot of times, and this is not exclusive to when I say self worth, I think a lot of times our self esteem, people believe you're automatically, for whatever reason, talking about women. We just automatically think that when it's self worth, that women have the patent of self esteem, and they don't. Self worth is not a gender exclusive thing. There are plenty men walking around here are not feeling good about themselves. And if you pay attention to what they're doing, what they're saying, how they're behaving, you will see it. And that it's universal. So when I say the fragile sense of self worth, I'm not pointing this at any particular gender. I'm just having a conversation saying overall, I believe we're trying to garner approval because we don't really feel good about who we are. We don't feel good about our makeup. So if I can get you to kind of look at me and shine a light on me, put some sun on me, maybe I'll start to feel better about who I am. But a lot of times what I notice about that, Lady Marcy, it's never enough. No matter how much people may validate you today, you wake up tomorrow, you'll need more of that to basically make you feel what you felt yesterday. And that's the problem I see with us seeking validation. It's not like your cup gets full and you go, well, put a lid on, okay, I'm good now. It's a constant thing of seeking validation. And that's where I think when you play into social media, I mean, I know the cat that put social media together was never imagining when he started, let's just say Facebook, for instance. When he started Facebook, I don't think he dreamed. It was basically to be in contact with his friends that people will use this as a tool to validate themselves on a daily basis. And look at the money, just based on validation, that alone, look what has done for him financially. And I don't think I mean, as smart as he may be, or as he is, I don't think when he started this, he thought that if I tap into the mental psychic of those that are emotionally crippled, those that are seeking validation, it's going to make me a million billionaire for life. Think about that for a second.
Well, because
I'm
I
sure he
don't.
stumbled.
Well,
I'm
no,
sure
I
he
was
stumbled upon that. I'm sorry.
no, I was just gonna say I don't think that it was ever like you said. It wasn't intended to be that. There's a documentary on there that really talks about like how it kind of social media for Google and Facebook, all those mammoth companies, it just kind of took off and took on an identity of its own. But back to validation, you know, validation and approval is like any other drug or addiction. And so, yeah, you're not only going to need to get it again, but you're constantly going to need to get more of it to get the same feeling. And when we start looking at why people do some of the things that they do, whether it's, let's use the BBLs, is that really for us or is that because we want someone to look at us and think a certain thing about us? When we look at men and they're going into debt for, these outrageously expensive cars and, or they're buying, whatever it could be, whatever the latest little toy is, or and for them it can be designer clothes, it can be facelifts and things like that, any type of plastic surgery, breast jobs for women, like all kinds of stuff, and it's all for what? And so that goes back into that, if you ask someone why they did those things, they would say because it makes me feel better. But how often do you really just sit around and look at your own butt? Not very often. So boobs, okay, maybe I can see those, but but we've had social media, uh, all over the place telling us what the ideal of beauty is, or what, you know, makes a woman attractive or what makes a man desirable. And so they're going out and they're chasing all of these things to try and to fit some sort of a mold that was created usually to make somebody money. It has nothing to do with people's emotions or what they really need, but we're out there seeking these things. And so then we go and we get one thing and we feel good about it for a little while and we get some compliments and we post some pictures and well now we're using filters and so now people don't even really get to see who you are, so now I've got to refill that cup again, so now I'm going to get some more surgery or I'm going to get, go buy this or go buy that, and it's all for what? Is it really for you or is it to garner the attention, acceptance, approval, or to just have somebody make you feel better about yourself? When we talk about social media and the play for likes and how often a lot of what we do or what we see on social media platforms is made up. It's fantasy. It's created. It's not real life. And so then we're out there, if we're somebody who's struggling with our self-worth and we're trying to, make ourselves feel better, the standard that we're holding ourselves up to doesn't even really exist. And so it's this constant chase to be something, but you're never going to arrive at it because what you're seeking to achieve is false. It's not real. And so I think it just becomes a trap, that chasing validation and seeking approval from other people. That was the most freeing thing for me when I learned how to just live unapologetically and be who I am. And it was a hard battle to fight. It took a lot of work. So it's not something that comes natural to us. Everybody wants to feel, like you said, loved and appreciated and feel attractive and, all of those things.
Yeah, it's interesting because social media definitely can lead to an unhealthy external approval. But I want to go back to something you just said about being unapologetic. And I want to kind of go back and revisit that because I believe in all of our lives, we're given an opportunity, we really are, to basically, regardless if you didn't get the love language as a child, if you didn't get the affirmation, you didn't get the physical touch, you didn't get the quality time, that doesn't mean that you haven't been given times to really basically fine tune your own approval of who you are. And to me, I'll say this: those things of affirmation I did get as a child. I did. I thank God that I was be blessed to be born in a situation where those things were afforded to me. Can't thank Him enough. Thank Him all the time for it throughout my life and still to this day. But even with that being said, there had been a time that I realized that there's certain things I'm just not going to be good at. There's going to be certain things that I just cannot do, and I can only do the best I can do, and I have to be. I'm okay with that, and I had to understand my shortcomings. Had to understand, what my strengths, and some of my shortcomings I knew I needed to work on. I approached it as such. So, in order for me to maintain what I was given earlier, I still had work to do. I had to really look inside and fine tune. And that had to be something done, you know, kind of throughout life in a sense. We reflect on and learn and really gauge for my self-worth. And as you said, being apologetic, realistically not caring, not paying attention, or not caring. If I know I'm basically working on my structure and maintaining what I need to maintain, not caring what others may think or feel. Now, that can sound, whatever it sounds like, but that's what I needed to do to maintain what I have here. I couldn't could give a hoot about, okay, if you look and you thought this or you thought that the case may be. Nah. So, therefore, I'll bring the question back to you because when you say unapologetic, how did you get to that point? And when you got to that point, you were, you know what? I'm not seeking. I don't need. This is not required for me. And I think, again, we all get those moments throughout life. Do we open the door and deal with it? Or do we keep the door closed and keep on the path that we're on? So when that door opened for you, if you don't mind, take us back to there and what went into all that.
So a few things happened. So we've talked before, and I've been on enough that we know about, or I think a lot of your listeners probably know about my situation with domestic violence in 2012. And so that was a spark for a lot of things and a lot of changes. I was forced to take a long, hard look at how I was choosing relationships and different behaviors that I was doing, my addiction to chaos. Like I had conditioned myself for it. So chaos no longer felt chaotic to me, but it looked chaotic to an outside observer as far as my personal life went, but professionally, I looked like I was polished and had it all together. So there's this, internal turmoil and struggle going on about how do I fit into this environment over here socially, and how do I navigate this corporate persona that I have, which I wasn't quite sure. Like, yeah, I'm successful, and yes, I make six figures and all of that. But if you don't feel like you belong in the room, then those are the types of things that send you back over to the chaotic side to where you feel a little bit more comfortable. And
Now,
so,
Marcy,
yes.
I'm gonna stop you. I just want to interject. I'm sorry to interrupt, but what made you feel at those moments you don't belong inside the room? Because you belong there. You were educated. You were put there. You were brought there for a reason. So why in your mind is the thought there you don't belong inside the room?
Um, I mean, I was in finance. I was a bank executive. And so it's a predominantly male dominated world. It's predominantly white males. So those two things to begin with. And then the females typically didn't look like me. They were, mostly white females that were on my level or ahead of me. And it wasn't until I really started to see Black women in positions of power in that industry. And so I was able to have some amazing mentors. One of them I'm still in contact today with. Her name is Renee Hardman, and she will probably never know the impact that she has had on me over the years, is being able to just show what it looks like to show up and just know your stuff, and to be okay. Like, it's okay that you know your stuff. It's okay that you're smart. It's okay that you can speak out and that you can advocate for yourself and you can position yourself appropriately. But prior to that, and her and a couple other mentors that I had, Black female mentors that I had, I would shrink in those rooms. And so it was, racially based, it was belief based, because I mean, I had been dealing with self esteem issues and self worth issues my entire life. So that wasn't new. But now I'm put in this position and I'm in these rooms and I'm, part of these conversations and board meetings and just things that were outside of my element. Uh, and then you couple that with the fact that I knew what was going on in my personal life. It was chaos. And, in my mind, it's like, I know nobody else in these rooms have these other
Hmm.
things going on. And so I just started to second guess myself. And that was the message that I struggled with, was that I didn't belong in the room. And as until you start really speaking up in those types of environments, other people are going to believe that you don't belong in the room. And so an interesting dynamic happened as I started to shift my belief systems about myself. I started to become more apologetic. I started speaking up more. And then the people in those rooms, especially the white women, began oftentimes to see me as competition. Where as long as I was just a, fat Black lady in the corner, not really saying too much, and kikiing with everybody, I was fine. I wasn't a threat. But as soon as I started to really show up in my true authentic self, then that became somewhat problematic for me, as it related to people who I thought were good, close colleagues. I would even call them friends, became treated me as though I was competition or I was an outsider or somehow I was no longer to be trusted. And it's like, no, you're just going to hear what I have to say now. So that was going on, but the shift really happened for me that kind of led into all of that was after the domestic violence and starting to do a lot of the work, I decided that I wanted to, explore other career options. I wanted to explore entrepreneurship, but I didn't really know what it looked like. And so I got another mentor. It was a business entrepreneurship mentor. And one of the things that he taught me to do was to evaluate what's in my life, everything from the people that are in my life to where I live to my possessions, and really decide what things are important to me. And when I started to do that, I realized that so many things that were in my life were not there for me. They were literally there for other people. The big house with the pool and, parties on the weekends and all that kind of stuff, that was not for me. That was to make usually the guy that I was dating happy, make him feel good about himself, because we would throw the parties at my house, but he didn't even live there, you know. And so that was the case. I started looking at all of the different areas. So where I live, how do I live, possessions, how do I invest my money, clothes, everything, every aspect you can think of your life, and really truly breaking it down and asking myself, is this for me? And what I realized at the end of all of that was that for me personally, I require very little. I don't need a big house to make me feel happy. I need a comfortable environment that makes me feel secure. And I can create that in a very small space. And I learned that in Utah. When I was in Utah, I lived in an efficiency that was furnished. So it wasn't even my own furniture because I wasn't going to be there long. But I was able to make it a home. So where I was at in the city mattered. Uh, the things that I brought in and that I had around me mattered, but the size of the space was not something that mattered to me. And so once you understand that and you're clear about what really matters to you, a lot of that validation seeking stops, because what you soon discover is that most of the things that you value, other people aren't going to understand, or the things that you're willing to walk away from, other people aren't going to get it. So you're never going to get their approval. You're never going to get their validation. And so at some point you stop seeking it and you really just say, like, what's best for me? And then that's how you start making that unapologetic walk, is because it doesn't have to mean something to anybody else. It just has to mean something to you. And so I often talk about my custom fitted life. And that's what that's about, is really, truly walking in what works for me. So when people think about how much I move, you don't have to understand why I move as much as I move. It doesn't have to be okay with you to move across the country and then decide, oh, you know what? I kind of liked where I was. I'm going to go back. And then, nope, I really like the other one. I'm going to go back. You don't have to understand that. It doesn't have to make sense to you. I do what makes me happy. And that's what really truly walking in that unapologetic space and operating in your custom fitted life really looks like. And that stopped all of that validation seeking, every bit of it.
Yeah, I'm glad that you found the spirit key and got into the loft today. Call it what you want to call it. What you said earlier,
Oh, I
stalking,
couldn't even
whatever
hear
it is.
you.
Yeah, whatever it is. I'm glad you found the hidden key and got inside, because I'm loving all this. This is When Black Men Talk. Of course, myself, Mark Ellie, and Lady Marcy. Do you love podcasts? Have you ever thought of creating your own podcast? What are you waiting for? Get started at podup.com. Podup is one of the sponsors of this podcast, and they will love to someday sponsor yours. Starting as easy as creating an account at podup.com today. Podup has everything you need to run a full professional show with over 35 different tools with AI integration. Get a 7-day free trial with no credit card required and 15% off with the code When Black Men Talk 15. Don't have time to start a podcast? Check out podallies.com. Get a team of podcast professionals to do all your website, social media, and editing work for your podcast. Pod Allies is an agency run by the folks who built the Pod Up podcasting software. Get started with them at podallies.com. Get 15% off when you sign up today at PodUp or PodAllies with code when Black Men Talk 15. PodUp and PodAllies can't wait to create with you and launch your own podcast. You know, I'm sitting there, I'm sitting back listening to you, and when you said about being in the room, and I remember distinctively my children taking them places when we were younger. It could have been educational stuff, and a lot of times when we're in that arena, they're the only black child there. May have been a few others, but the majority of times they're the only. And I've always said to them, "You belong here. Never walk into a place just because you don't see familiarity and think you don't belong. You're prepared to be here. And if you're not, you work to get there." And I feel, convinced to say this that a lot of times we as black people, we walk around thinking there's certain things that we're not privileged to, certain places we shouldn't be. And to me, we got to get, and I'm not saying this based on what you're feeling at that moment, we got to come from underneath that spell, that mental spell. And I'm going to take the word spell away because I don't believe in spells, but that mental mindset. Because, we built this freaking country and they get paid for it. We have done a lot in this country. So I get it to an extent, but we walk around and act like there's somebody walking on the face of earth that's better than us because their skin color is not ours. They've just given more privilege than what we've had. They give more opportunities. But there's no other race walking on the face of this planet better than my race. Now, what we do with it is our business, how we handle things. But I'm never going to allow myself or anyone that I care about to think and put them in a situation and think because, you know, they look different, they're better than you. No, they're not. No one's better than you. And I've always lived that by that mantra my entire life. And I'm glad I developed that on my own. Because I've been in a lot of scenarios where training and doing different things, learning things throughout life, working different jobs, whatever. You look around, no, I might be the only one there. But guess what? I'm here. And I'm here for a reason. God allowed me to be here. He's not going to put me in a place where I can't handle it. He's not going to put me in a place where I don't belong. So if I was bold enough and had the forthright to want to be here, damn it, I'm here. And ain't none of you motherfuckers better than me. That was always my mentality.
Well, alrighty then.
Sometimes I just gotta say it, Lady Marcy. I just have to go on and say it. It's just, and maybe that's a man thing. It could be. That could be a man thing because our egos tend to be a little different. We walk around a little different, and we kind of have to be. And some of that ego, in a sense, does cover up some insecurities. It does. But you have to kind of, for me, that's the projection. But I'm just not even talking for a black man. I'm just talking about black people in general. I just see it a lot of times where we're in situations and we have that self doubt, like, yeah, because, yeah, you might have only seen them doing it. That don't mean they have the patent on it. We're more than qualified to do anything in this country, anything. So I'm not surprised when I see certain things happen, just like, with the lady of the VP, Kamala Harris. I'm not surprised. It doesn't surprise me. I look at a senator in the state of Connecticut, and I remember talking about her. I can't think of her name right now. Man, I hate that when that happens. I can't think of her name. But I remember when she won, she was a school teacher in the state of Connecticut, and she won School Teacher of the Year. And she went to visit the White House. Based on that, she met President Obama. And now she's like a second or third term senator in the United States government. And when I talked about, I went back and read about her life. She was a young girl that was growing up in a bad situation, and teachers took her under their wings, and they basically helped her get along. They moved her through, helped her get on to college, and look where she is today. She did not have that opportunity. Of course, they didn't step in, but that wasn't based on the color of her skin. Her being Congress now, that's not based on the color of her skin. So I'm just talking about the mentality that sometimes we ride with. And if you put that, that lack of mentality that we can't do whatever, you put that with bad faith, but damn, there you go. There you go. So sometimes I think mentally, and maybe this kind of plays into validation, mentally we're our own worst enemies. We look for others to basically justify and all this other stuff. No, it starts inside. We've all been given the tools, what we need to survive, to strive, and do what's necessary. So to me, seeking, a like from someone basically on a daily basis approving you on social media, you're wasting your time. You waste some serious good ass time that you could be doing much more with. And that's just my personal opinion. And I've always felt that way. You're wasting time because you were born to do much more. You were born to be greater, to experience much more. And if you're not doing it, that's your choice. That is your personal choice. Because even again, if you weren't given the love language, the affirmation, you've been given times throughout life to do better. You've been given time, so it's up to you to take advantage of it. I got a little long-winded, Lady Marcy, so I'm going to kind of pull back a little bit and allow you to basically, if you want to respond to something I said, or if you want to take something that was said earlier and kind of re-hit it, you can do it. But it's just sometimes to me, in my long-windedness, things come and I just have to roll with it. And I'm grateful that I have a platform that gives me the opportunity to do such. And the name of this show speaks it all: when black men talk. It's just, and people might say, well, what's the difference? I don't care the difference. It's just when we talk as men, we speak a different kind of tone. We speak a little different texture. And that's based on what we experience and who we are. And I'm never ashamed. I'm always going to push that up front. And that's what that is. Your response, Lady Mars.
No, I was just thinking, mine wasn't necessarily the not feeling that I belonged in the room. That came from childhood, like never feeling that I belonged, that I never fit in. And you got to understand, I'm biracial, so I was raised with my mom. She's white, and then my dad was absent. He's black, but I had a sort of fill-in black stepfather who ended up being abusive to my mom. But that's a whole other story, which we could go down a rabbit hole if we want to, but we won't. So long story short, though, I never felt like I was black enough and I never felt like I was white enough. So it was difficult for me to feel like growing up that I really belonged anywhere. I remember Thanksgivings and Christmases and things with my mom's family and never really feeling like I was the only one that looked like me. There'd be 30 or 40 people there, and there's this little brown girl, and I wasn't treated poorly. I wasn't, I don't want anybody to think that I was, grew up discriminated against inside my own family. It was nothing like that. I was treated with love and kindness and respect and all of those things. But intrinsically, like, you just know if you don't fit in, you just know you're different. But I didn't know why I was different. I didn't know how I was different. And so a lot of my more um I would say influential moments as far as, formulating my belief systems and a lot of that kind of stuff, ironically came from my stepfather's family. So my aunties and my grannies and, things on his side of the family. And that's where I chose to invest a lot of my time. Like I said, that's where I got a lot of the life lessons that I have and um, things like that. And so there, but growing up through, elementary school, junior high school, even on into high school, I was never black enough and I was never white enough. And so not understanding really where you fit in the world and not knowing how to create or having the confidence to create your own space is a recipe to walk into a room like that full of successful people and not understand where your place is, and not understand or not have the confidence to be able to advocate for your positioning. And so I had to work on myself, and I had to deal with the self-esteem issues and the belief systems and the daddy issues and, all of the baggage that came with me from childhood in order for me to get the footing underneath me to say, I'm creating my own space. I don't need to fit into your space. I'm okay. I'm going to be fine, but you will hear what I have to say. And I do know my shit, and you will know that by the time I walk out of the room. So whether or not you believe that I belong here or not, even some days when I wasn't sure if I belonged there or not, I knew my shit, and that was always going to shine through. And so, I think relying on my intelligence and, my ingenuity and things like that helped me along the way, but that insecurity was with me from those early cognitive learning periods, 0 to 6. And they went
Yo,
with me everywhere I went. Took them like a war. What we were talking about the other day, like a badge of honor. Insecurity, yep, I got that one.
check
Low
that
self
off, huh?
esteem, got that too. Like you name
Uh,
it, I had it. Had lots of issues.
well, sometimes a show comes out of just listening. Sometimes a show comes out that's presenting the thought, and I'm listening to you, and I'm saying well what I heard for our next show. If you're willing to do it, I believe you are, but I'm just being polite and saying
It's going to depend on how this B&E from this grabbing the key and sneaking into the loft with my drink plays out. We'll have to see. I don't know.
Okay. I would like to our next conversation to focus around you being interracial because
Oh boy.
interracial. Yeah, because I mean, I look at it as you were speaking, my mind is rolling. And if we really go back a little bit and think about it, there was a time when interracial marriages weren't even legal in this country. They were in certain states. Believe it or not, I think there's some states that still have that on the board. They just don't enforce it. Where it was illegal to for a black man or white woman to marry.
Mm-hmm.
And so that didn't stop things from happening, far it didn't stop, from kids being born. And a lot of times we don't take you look at now, we see it, it's more prevalent now. We see it more focused, not focused, but more in the forefront. But a lot of times we don't really talk to someone that's interracial. And like you said, certain things you felt you didn't feel this. Some people look at you may not that. And to me, that's a conversation, and that's to me that's deep because realistically, what you say you weren't feeling, and when you just heard me talking about some other things, I was talking about and I've always felt this because I knew I was 100% this. I knew of the struggle. I knew all that. So I didn't have those thoughts that you have.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, that's a conversation worth having, a conversation really worth having because, you know, I can only imagine, but I don't want to imagine. I want to hear. I want to be able to, mentally experience. And the only way I could do that is to basically hear it and, and start to walk into it. So that, and, you're being mixed interracial, yeah, and allow you to talk about it and open up and share. It's the same way that I'm going to learn more, understand more. So will others. Because if you look around us, it's prominent. We see it all the time, and they're having children. And a lot of times we stop with the man and the wife. Okay, they're interracial. They got married. We don't think about the children. We don't think about what they may have came across. We don't think about how they're feeling because they didn't choose to be interracial. And I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with it, but you didn't choose to be interracial. I didn't have a choice either, but you didn't choose to be. But yet you had to deal with whatever came with it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the premise to where I would love to have that conversation. I mean, once you get over, sneaking in, I would love that to be our next conversation.
I'll think about it.
Oh my goodness, my goodness, my goodness, my goodness. I think that'll be a vibrant conversation, and I look forward to it. Hopefully, you make up your mind. Your mind's already made up. You make up that mind, solid, and we'll get it done. But I want to thank you for what you always do when you come. When you come inside the loft, you basically you make the light bulb shake. You know what I mean? They start shaking a little bit. Marcy said they start shaking, and the response, your depth. I love it. I'm happy to have you part of this. What we're doing at One Black Man Talk. So I want to thank you again for what you just being you, just being you.
Unapologetically so. You are welcome.
Thank you. Folks, we get together real soon. As always, thank you for giving us an ear. Appreciate that you take time out of your day, whatever you're doing, to just listen. Just listen. It's When Black Men Talk. Myself, Mark Elliott, Lady Marci. We're getting together again real soon. In the meantime, don't ever forget that God loves you.